lot of singular words that you could use to summarize Porsche. Heritage, racing, curves, but turbo could be one of the top words that just stands out for people to say, what is a Porsche and what Porsche is iconic. To me, the 911 Turbo is one of the most iconic cars they've ever produced. I'm CJ Wilson, General Manager and owner of Porsche Fresno, and we are here with an icon, the 911 Turbo. Also known as the 930, debuted in 1974, so this is the 50th anniversary. One of the greatest things about the 911 Turbo is it took race car technology into the hands of street car owners. Sometimes with bad results, as this car was originally known as the Widowmaker. People weren't used to a turbocharged engine where you have a ramp up of power followed by a sudden whoosh of like 40% more power all of a sudden. So what would happen is people would be driving these things through corners and then think to themselves, oh, I've got this thing, and then they're flat on the throttle and wham, the turbo hits, the car pitches sideways. They're not really sure how to handle that. Like, it doesn't feel like anything's happening until 4,000 RPM. And then like suddenly, here it comes. Like 3,000, 3,200, pedal to the floor, nothing happens. All of a sudden, 4,000. Right there, right as you're passing like 60, 65 miles an hour in second gear. That's where the fun happens. That's where all those dentists get in trouble. So to time that boost in a race car version of this, with 600, 700 horsepower, just that one monster turbo, you're having to hit the throttle pedal while you're still braking into a corner, and it's going to be so awkward. It's like such a new technique because that lag is so serious. I mean, you're talking like 3 seconds of lag. So you're going into a corner, you're on the brakes, you downshift, trying to time it to get to the apex. That's why those guys were great, and that's why the people that could figure out how to drive these cars just smoked everybody, because they had the boost building in the background, you know what I mean, while they were still slowing the car down. So then suddenly they came on boost all at once. It had to be hilarious. So it's kind of like the way a lot of people today will have turbocharged everything or hybrids to go for more power, more efficiency, or whatever. Really, this was about how can we take a existing platform and bring the Le Mans technology or the Daytona racing or the Daytona winning formula into the hands of doctors, dentists, and wealthy individuals across the planet. So this was known as like the Widowmaker because the joke was that the dentist that buys it is gonna end up in the hedges or in the trees or something like that. But for me, it's a classic. Silver, black interior, huge whale tail. You have the Fuchs wheels, which are iconic. And this car stylistically really kind of set Porsche in a whole direction for all of the 80s and into the 90s as well. Porsche's been famous for the frog eyes. They're one of the few manufacturers that stuck with like basically one headlight design for 50 years now. And it just, even today in 2024, this car looks absolutely timeless and is a favorite of mine and a favorite of a lot of collectors, which is why the values of these things continue to rise. Originally debuting literally 50 years ago, the 3-liter 911 Turbo was originally, I think, about 276 horsepower. Today, the Turbo S, 50 years later, has 641 horsepower. Every couple years, they add a new version, a new facelift, something like that, a new variation, add a little bit of displacement, go to 3.3 liters, go to 3.6 liters, and then they just keep adding power, adding boost, eventually into a twin turbo in the 90s. So this car was the one that started it all, the 930. This was the car that you would put up against a V12 Ferrari and say, okay, this versus this, what's the fastest car? You're gonna drag race your friend. At one point, these cars were actually outlawed for having too much performance, which is kind of hilarious to think that your car was too fast to be sold in America anymore. So what happened was during the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, Porsche, they stopped selling these cars to Americans because of the highway traffic safety, EPA type stuff. So people were buying cars from Germany, buying cars from Britain, buying cars from France, buying cars from Japan, and importing them, known as gray market cars. So it's very rare, like the 70s cars pre-gray market are actually more of an authentic thing, whereas the gray market cars were literally like tucked in a shipping container and like sent to Palo Alto and then like in some guy's shed for 20 years, and then he sells the house and forgets he has it in there because they didn't have them even like road legalized. But this is also at the time when all the DMV paperwork was literally paperwork. There was no electronic records. So someone could like submit a registration and they could typewrite it out if they had the form, and that's how a lot of these gray market cars came into the country. So in the 80s, there was this whole wacky thing going on where dudes were, you know, they got a friend, someone's getting a watch, someone's getting a purse, someone's getting a Porsche. Like it's this whole thing, cars coming in at the port. It was really the Wild West for a little bit there. But eventually, Porsche figured out how to get the cars passing through the smog certifications, and then the cars roared back to success in the late 80s with the G50 transmission, which is like a really big update for everybody that's a Porsche fan. But back to this particular car, 1979, 4-speed transmission with reverse. But I guess the gear shift is sort of, in a way, smoother and easier and more casual because of all the lag. If you had this really peaky motor that was just trying to rip your face off all the time, and you know you're trying to shift fast, and the car couldn't shift fast, then it would be really annoying. So this car is supposed to be driven at a very, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but in terms of like a GT3, for those people that drive one of ththose cars, or a GT4 Spider or something like that, it doesn't need that kind of a frantic shift lever. You're kind of casually going through the gears, building momentum, building momentum, building momentum. It's not it's not Fast and the Furious where you just keep snapping up shifts. It's only got 4 gears. So Toretto runs out of room pretty quickly. So it's really kind of funny because all these cars today have 7 speeds, 8 speeds, 10-speed gearboxes. Porsche was getting it all done with a 4-speed because the car had so much torque. All you had to do was shift it into second and you could basically drive around town, shift it into third and you could get on the highway, drive 80 or 90 miles an hour. And then if you wanted to go for broke at 155 or 160 miles an hour, you're in 4th gear. It wasn't until the late 80s that they went to the G50 transmission, which added the 5th speed for the turbos. But at that point, this car had already won Le Mans, already had won Daytona, had already won Sebring, had won dozens of races around the world, big famous international sports car races, with basically this, with a roll cage and extra horsepower. Because they took a platform that worked as a street car and they added to it, added power, added grip with slick tires, a little bit extra wheels, limited edition available, you know, to celebrate winning some races. Eventually a lightweight version, a slant nose version, a bigger tail, a Turbo S, side scoops. So, but this was really the original. This was it, the 1979 930, the Icon. No special effects, just metal, no carbon fiber, you know, just steel. That's it. This whole car is built out of steel. It's little, it's fun, it's loud, and to me, it's a Porsche.